Aleph Dalet. Aleph Dalet. In the 17th, no, that's, I think we're Aleph Hey, correct?
Aleph Hey, yes, Aleph Hey.
Okay, let me get rid of this sign over here. Okay, there you go. If Rosh Chodesh, Kislevs, arrived but rain did not fall, Bezdin decrees a series of 3 fasts upon the entire community. They may eat and drink after dark, and they're permitted to work, bathe, anoint. So this is, I think we did this yesterday. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. This is what we did. We did it this time yesterday. Okay.
They may eat and drink after dark, and they're permitted to work, bathe, anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, and have marital relations. If these fasts passed and they were not answered with rain, Bezdin decrees a series of three more fasts upon the entire community. They may eat, drink only while it is still daytime, and are forbidden to work, bathe, and anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, have marital relations. Also, they must lock the public bathhouses. If these fasts passed and they were not answered with rain, Bezdin decrees a series of 7 more fasts upon them, totaling 13 upon the entire community. These latter 7 fasts are more stringent than the earlier ones, for on these they sound the shofar and lock the stores. On Monday, they may open the store doors partially toward evening, but on Thursday, they are permitted to keep the doors open in honor of Shabbos. If 3 fasts passed and they were not answered with rain, they must decrease commerce, construction, planting, betrothals, marriages, and greeting one another, as befits people censured by the omnipresent. The distinguished individual resume their fasting until Nisan is over. If they have the Nisan ended and rain fell, it is a symptom of a curse, as it says, is today not the wheat harvest.
Okay. Great base. Say the Taanis Ketzad. Okay. So on those 7 Taanis, the really stringent ones, when they're like all fasting and davening out in the city square. So what do they actually do? They would actually take the Aron HaKodesh with the Sifrei Torah out into the public square. They take ashes of wood. They specifically mention wood, makle over here, that is from wood as opposed to afar, dust. So it's specifically an ash thing. Al Gabe Ateva, they would sprinkle ash on the Aron HaKodesh, Uva Rosh Hanasi, and somebody else would sprinkle ashes on the Nasi, the most senior person, the Uva Rosh based in. And that is even more of a humiliation than if they put it on themselves. It's when it's imposed, when it's put by somebody else, it should be more of a gut punch. And everyone then goes and puts ashes on his own head. And the most senior person there gives the musar. He brings the example of Ninveh in the Sefer Yonah. What does he say? What does it not say? It doesn't say Vayar ha'elokim es sakam be'es tanisam. It's not that Hashem sees their sackcloth and their fasting. Ela, what does it actually say? Vayar ha'elohim es masehem ki shavu midarkam hara'a. He saw their deeds, that they returned from their bad ways. Okay, so this is don't just think that by fasting and wearing sackcloth you're being Yotzei Zayin.
Right. Okay.
All right. This has got to penetrate into your hearts.
Right. They're in your hearts. Right. So before we continue, I just wanted to say that I wanted to dedicate the letters today's learning to my mother, Al Shalom. Today's her Yotzei. So her name is Golda Zisel Bat Yaakov.
Okay. Over Kabbalah who Omer, the Kiru Levavchem al Bigdechem says, and so this is so the 2 psukim. Why do we need to bring 2 psukim? The Rambam explains about this. That the first one is just talking about that. Okay, Hashem saw their things. It's a narrative. Whereas in Yoel, Yoel is now the Navi telling you what you need to do. So it's not just about narrative; it's also about what the Navi exhorts us to do. Tear your hearts, not your clothes. Amadu b'tfila. So they stood up in prayer. Moridin lifnei hateva zaken v'ragil. So So in the tefillah, they would appoint a Baal tefillah who's a zaken and who's fluent in all the davening. V'yesh lo banim, and he's got children or beis rekam, but his house is empty. Meaning, this is an ambiguous sort of term. What does it mean, beis rekam? He doesn't have parnasa, so he's going to really feel it, right? That's one explanation. And there's another parish in the Gemara, beis rekam in averos, that he is empty of sin. Okay. Kadeshi yehe libo shalem b'tefillah, so his heart should be complete in the tefillah. V'omer lifnehem esrim v'arba brachos. So normally the Shmona Esrei is Shmona Esrei. Okay, but now it's 24 brachos. So we're adding six brachos. This is before the institution of Birkas Haminim. So it's 18 plus 6. Shmona Esrei shebachol yom u'mosif alehem od sheish. So now we're going to see what are these extra 6 brachas that get added into the Shmona Esrei. Ve'elohein zichronos v'shofaros. So we add in brachas about zikaron and shofarot, just like we do on Rosh Hashanah. And then he adds another bracha which begins with El Hashem b'tzarasa li karasi v'yaneni. To Hashem in my sorrows I called to him and he answered me. Okay, that's number 3. Esayanai laharim, right? That's from Tehillim, which we recognize. And then another one is number 5 is Mimah Makim Krasicha Hashem. These, by the way, notably, these are the Tehillim that we typically go to when we're like after davening, when we're davening for a chole, davening for some sort of matzav, we add on these Tehillim. Mimah Makim Krasicha Hashem. Tefillah Le'oni Ki Ya'atov. That one we typically don't add on. It's that's Tehillim Kuf or Kuf Aleph. Which one is that? Actually, but Tefillah Le'ani is, but it's longer capital. So I guess that's why we typically don't say it after the davening. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Lo haya tzarich lomar zichronos v'shofaros ela omer tachtehen. So Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, in place of zichronos and shofaros that everyone else is saying, says Ra ki yeh ba'aretz dever ki yeh. And that's it. So quotes those psukim from Malachim Perek Ches. About the Tefillah La'ani is Mizmor Kuf base. It's 102. Okay, right. Rav ki yeh ba'aretz. Asher haya, and the second one he says Asher haya debar Hashem el Yirmiyahu al divrei habatzaros, and the words of Hashem to Yirmiyahu on because of the famines. Omer chosmehen, and he says the brachas with Baruch Atah Hashem at the end, which we will go into in tomorrow's Mishnayos. How so this is not by the way, that's not the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda's words end with his substitutes for the zichronos and shofaros, but the Omer chosmehen is a consensus point, which is that all these six additions to the Shmona Esrei, each one of them concludes with their own chasima of Baruch Atah Hashem. Something. In
the beginning they mentioned Sophros and Zikros, but they don't say Malchus.
Yes, that's right, because it's not because Rosh Hashanah Dafka is the Malchuyos. That's the
right.
But when it comes to these fast days that we're talking about, there we're blowing shofar and the Chatzotros, and we're also trying to ask Hashem to remember us. But it's not about kingship. Kingship is an Indian that's specific to Rosh Hashanah.
Right.
Okay. Let's go back to Rosh Hashanah, Gimel Aleph.
If the Beis Din and all of Israel saw the moon, or if the witnesses were interrogated, but they did not manage to say it is sanctified before it grew dark, it is full. If only Beis Din saw it, 2 of them should stand and testify before the others, and they should say it is sanctified, it is sanctified. If 3 saw it and they constitute a Beis Din, then 2 should stand up and set some of their colleagues beside the single one and testify before them and say, it is sanctified, for an individual cannot be trusted alone. All shofars are valid except that of a cow because it is called a keren. Rabbi Yossi says, are not all shofars called keren, as it is said when they make a long blast with the ram's keren? The shofar of Rosh Hashanah should be from a wild goat, straight and with a gold-covered mouthpiece, and with 2 trumpets at the sides. The shofar blows long and the trumpets blow short, for the commandment of the day is with the shofar. Okay. One more? That's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's meant for the shofar.
Okay. Demai. Gimel Dalet. If Yehuda says one.
Hang on, first Sukkah.
Oh, Sukkah's not. I said Demai because I looked at the. It's the art scroll, not the art scroll, the Kahati. Okay, Sukkah, Gimel Dalet. Rabbi Yishmael says one is required to take 3 myrtle twigs, 2 willows, 1 lulav, and 1 esrog. Even if 2 are nipped and 1 not nipped, Reb Tarfon says even if all 3 are nipped, and Rabbi Akiva says just as a single lulav and a single etrog, so too only a single myrtle and a single willow. A stolen or withered etrog is invalid. Of an asherah or of a condemned city is invalid. Of Orla is invalid. One of defiled truma is invalid, and of undefiled truma is not to be taken. But if one did take it, it is valid. Of Demai, Beit Shammai declare it invalid, but Beit Hillel declare it valid. Ma'aseh Sheni and Yerushalayim, it should not be taken, but if one did take it, it is valid. If scabs covered most of it, or if its nipple were removed, if it was peeled or it was split or was perforated or even the slightest part of it was missing, it's invalid. If scabs covered its lesser part, or if the stalk is missing or it was perforated by nothing was missing, it is valid. But an Ethiopian etrog is invalid. If green as a leek, Red Meir declares it valid, and Rabbi Yehuda invalid.
Okay, Arabin.
Okay. Above Zion. Brothers or partners who eat at their father's table, but who sleep in their own home, need an eruv for each one. Therefore, if one of them forgot to contribute to the eruv, he must nullify his rights. When is this so? When they bring the eruv to another place, but if the eruv was brought to them, or there are no other residents in the courtyard, they need not contribute to the eruv. Beit Shammai says an eruv for each group. For each group of Beis Hillel says 1 eruv for all of them. They agree, however, that when some of them are quartered in rooms or in upper stories, they need an eruv for each group. Brothers or partners who eat at their father's table, but who sleep in their own homes, need an.
Just give me a second. Sorry, go ahead.
Need an eruv for each one. Therefore, if one of them forgot to contribute to the eruv, he must nullify his rights. When is this so? When they bring their eruv to another place, but if the eruv is brought to them, or if there are no other residents in the courtyard, they might not contribute to the eruv. 5 courtyards which open one into the other and into an alley. If they made an eruv in the courtyards but did not make a shituf in the alley, they are permitted in the courtyards but prohibited in the alley. If they did make a shituf in the alley, they are permitted here and there. If they made an eruv for the courtyards and a shituf for the alley, but one of the residents of the courtyard forgot to contribute to the eruv, they're permitted here and there. And if one of the residents of the alley did not participate in the shituf, they're permitted in the courtyards but are prohibited in the alley. For an alley is to the courtyards as a courtyard is to the houses. 2 courtyards, one behind the other. If the inner made an eruv but the outer did not, the inner is permitted while the outer is prohibited. The outer but not the inner, both are prohibited. Each courtyard made its own eruv then, each is individually permitted. Rabbi Akiva prohibits the outer because the rite of passage restricts it. But the comments say the rite of passage does not restrict it. Okay.
Okay, good.
Now we'll do the
Yep, Beis Hay.
Okay, Beis Hay. Meir says, of that which is usually measured in large quantity was measured in small quantity. The small quantity comes under the rule of the larger quantity. If one which usually is measured in small quantities was measured in large quantities, the larger quantity comes under the rule of the small quantity. Which is a large quantity? For dry, 3 calves, and for moist, 1 dinner. When Yossi says baskets of figs, baskets of grapes, or hampers of vegetables, so long as they are sold in lots, are exempt. Wrong way. The sages did not require the bakers to separate anything except the quantity of Truba, Misa, and Hakala. Shopkeepers may not sell demai. All who supply large quantities may sell demai. Who are those that sell in large quantities?
You've gone backwards.
Well, that's not unusual. Okay.
Gimel
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I did. Okay. Gimel Aleph. One may give the poor demai to eat and the Aksanana demai to eat. Rabbi Gamliel used to give his workers demai to eat. And wardens of charity, Beit Shammai said they should give the tithe to those who do not tithe and the untied to those who tithe. Thus everyone will eat tithe food. But the Kachamim say they collect without question and distribute without question whoever wishes to tithe tithes. If one wishes to cut off leaves of vegetables in order to lighten his burden, he may not throw them away before tithing. If one buys vegetables in the market and decides to return them, he may not return them before tithing, only lack counting. If he was buying and saw another better batch, he may return it because he has not yet drawn it. Okay. Yeah. We have Caleb. Okay, Vav Gimel. 3 stones were made into 2 stoves. If one of the outer stones became tamei, the part of the middle stone that serves the tamei stone is tamei, and the part that serves the tahor stone is tahor. If the tahor stone was removed, the middle stone becomes entirely tamei. If the tamei stone was removed, the middle stone becomes entirely tahor. If 2 outer stones became tamei, if the middle one was large, one allots as much as is needed to set a pot on either side, and the remainder is tahor. If it was small, it is entirely tamei. The middle stone was removed. If the middle stone was removed, if a large cauldron can be set upon the stove, it is tamei. If the stone was returned, it is tahor. If the stone was plastered with clay, it will be susceptible to tumah from when one heats it enough to cook the egg on it. 2 stones were made into a stove and became tamei, and then one placed a stone next to one of the tamei stones on one side, and a stone next to the other tamei stone on the other side. Half of one tamei stone is tamei, and half of the tahor, and half of the other tamei stone is tamei, and half of it is tahor. If the tahor stone were removed, the other returns to the state of their tumah. The stove bases of households was collapsed. If it was less than 3 handvakum, it is tamei. Since one heats it from below and the pots above will cook, but if it was more than that, it is tahor. If one inserted a stone or a pebble, it is tahor. If he plastered it with clay, it will be susceptible to tumah from then on. And this was the response of Rabbi Yehuda regarding this oven that was placed over the mouth of a pit or over the mouth of a cistern. Okay. That's it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Where am I? Here I am. And we have Basabah. Hey, Bob. There are 4 rules for dealing with sales. If he sold them superior wheat and it was found to be inferior, the buyer can retract. If he sold them inferior wheat and was found to be superior, the seller can retract. If he sold them inferior wheat and was found to be inferior, or superior wheat and was found to be superior, neither can retract. If he sold him red wheat and it was found to be white, or white wheat and it was found to be red, or he sold them olive wood and it was found to be sycamore, or sycamore and it was found to be olive, for he sold him wine and it was found to be vinegar, or vinegar and it was found to be wine, both of them can retract. If one sold produce to another, if he drew it but did not measure it, he has acquired it. If he measured but did not draw it, it has not acquired. If it acquired it, if he is prudent, he rents his space. One who buys flax from another does not acquire until he moves it from place to place. If it was attached to the ground and he detached any amount, he has acquired it. If one sold wine or sold to another and appreciated and depreciated, if it happened before the measure was filled, it belongs to the seller. Once the measure is filled, it belongs to the seller. Once the measure was filled, it belongs to the buyer. If there was a middleman between them and the barrel broke, it broke for the middleman. He's obliged to let 3 drops drip out for him, and if he turned it over and drained it, it belongs to the seller. A storekeeper, however, is not obligated to let 3 drops drip out. Rabbi Yehuda says only on the Eve of Shabbos at dusk is he exempt. And if someone went to a storekeeper with a plunge in his hand and he measured out for him, and this is worth of oil, and gave him an issa, If he broke the jar or lost the
Eliezer, hello. Hello.
Yehuda exempts him.
Hello.
Because he